openly misled the public on what was really going on. I mean, again, so many examples on vaccine safety, on pregnant women should be getting this, 6 months old should be getting this. It's safe and effective when we neither know about safety nor long-term effectiveness. There wasn't even an approach that many European countries took of let's really focus on high-risk groups and arguably, give it to them where we see most amount of benefit. Everyone else, here's what we know, here's what we don't know. The initial trials say that the COVID vaccines reduce symptomatic infection for the first few months. We don't know about long-term. We didn't test mortality, so we can't really tell long-term on severe COVID, although there was some data afterwards that seemed to have suggested that. But we don't know about safety. We're not really sure. And this actually goes, we can kind of segue into some of the recent news of like people recently who kind of bought this mainstream information on COVID uncritically and understandably fell victim to some of the stuff, and now have recently come out and said, oh, that was a mistake. There's a number of examples. A lot of people know about this. Megyn Kelly recently saying she went to her doctor and got tested positive for some kind of autoimmune issue. Now, she was vague about it, so I don't know what the details are, but she asked her doctor about, could this be related to the vaccine? Because there is certainly a link between COVID, the mRNA vaccines, and certain autoimmune conditions. And the doctor said something like, yes, it could definitely be possible. A lot of people with the vaccine have been getting this. Now, obviously, we don't know for sure. It could be totally unrelated. But, Megyn said at the time, in this recent interview, that she basically regrets getting the vaccine at the time and not making a smarter decision. Same thing with Vivek Ramaswamy, a Republican candidate for the presidency, talking about how he got the first 2 shots and regrets taking it in light of what we know about the myocarditis risk, which is concentrated in younger males. And he happens to be, I believe, in his late 30s. And then Elon Musk recently saying that his 3rd booster shot almost landed him in the hospital, right? And I believe he's also talked, Elon, about how I believe some family relative, their son, who I believe is an adolescent male, got myocarditis after the vaccine. Tons and tons of these stories. And this relates to, I'll just say one last thing, to a recent piece that I did with Dr. Anish Koka in Philadelphia. He runs a leading cardiology clinic, and his clinic administered the mRNA vaccines in big numbers, mostly to elderly people, mostly people over 60, 65, but some people under the age of 20 and 30, some younger people involved. And I spoke to him, and he's been very honest on this topic. He himself is double vaxxed and boosted, as well as his wife. And one of his daughters, I believe, is immunocompromised. So he was very worried about COVID. Not at all a conspiracy theorist, very reasonable, smart guy, pro-vaccine generally. He told me up front, he said, in light of all this information that's come out on the myocarditis front, I seriously regret giving this vaccine, especially to younger people, and violating their informed consent, when at that time, we did not know about safety and efficacy the way we know certain things now, right? At that time, I was wrong to give this out, knowing that these people were at very low risk, may not have had comorbidities or were immunocompromised, and I gave it to them without being absolutely certain about the safety profile. And that to me is a level of honesty, whether it's Megyn Kelly, Elon, Vivek, but this in particular, Dr. Anish Koka, saying that he would have done differently if he could, change his decision now. That is what you call epistemic humility, right? I was wrong at the time, and now my views have changed, and now I'm going to look at the world differently. Here is how my narrative has changed. Here is how the system in which I use to understand reality and analyze data has changed, and I'm a human. I get things wrong. We all get things wrong. So here's how I'm going to act differently. Not this other, frankly, bullshit of like, oh, at that time, I was actually right because that's what the data said. Now things have changed, but I was right at the time, and I was right, and I was appropriately worried along every step of the way because that's what the FDA and the CDC and Eric Tobel were saying. Therefore, I was right at the time. It's like, no, own up to at that time you being wrong about some very serious things, and that's okay to be wrong because we're humans and we get things wrong all the time.
Wrong. And one of the things that they were wrong about was the reliability of the messaging that was supposedly derived from the data, which we now know it was wrong because we have better information. But, you know, the Megyn Kelly situation is interesting for me. You probably do not know, but I remember vividly that Megyn Kelly had me on her show. Right. And she took me to task for a tweet that I had made, and I had already corrected it. I had deleted it, reposted it, and explained that I had made an error in my tweet, but that the theme of the tweet was still one that I believed in. My claim in the tweet was that virtually everybody that I had talked to who had gotten the vaccines had a story to tell about a reaction, and that a lot of this was frightening. It turned out there were a few people that I had forgotten that I had talked to, so it wasn't quite as extreme as I had said. But nonetheless, I did have an incredible number of conversations with people who did not volunteer that they had had a adverse reaction until I asked them, at which point I found out. So my point had been, you have to ask in order to know how common these adverse reactions are. And when you do, you'll find out they're very, very common. In any case, Megyn Kelly gave me a hard time over this. I thought she was fair about it, but it was a difficult interview. Yeah. And then there's a question about, well, how much of a coincidence is it that years down the road, she herself is now reporting a severe adverse event? And I can't, obviously any individual case could be a coincidence, but the fact is other people that I have tangled with over the safety of these vaccines also have people in their immediate circle who have had very serious adverse events. Yes. And so in any case, the real point is the number of adverse events here is truly staggering. It is truly staggering such that if we look around our circle and evaluate honestly, it is touching all of us.